The Gophers had a close one against Michigan, almost pulling off the upset, but can they officially complete a full game and a real upset versus USC?
You are Locked On Golden Gophers, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Gopher fans? You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Today, we're prepping for the USC Trojans. We're going to talk about the keys to this matchup. We're going to talk about strengths, weaknesses of the Trojans, and finally, the make or breaks for this game. We're also going to talk about three players Minnesota has to slow down in this matchup in order to bring home the dub, and the three biggest concerns I have for Minnesota versus USC, all on today's show. If this is your first time listening, I appreciate you tapping in. Be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube. And if you are an everydayer, you're listening on the constant, on the go, on the move, and you know this is all things Gopher each and every day of the week, please tell others about the show, share the show on social platforms, and let's get this thing continuing to build in the right direction. So let's dive in. Let's talk about this USC Trojans team. So when you're talking about the team as an overall, and you're looking at this game, USC has had one of the most difficult starts to the season in the country, in my opinion. And not the most difficult starts when it comes to bad results, but more so the opponents that they've played each week through 4 weeks on the season. They had a neutral game versus LSU in Las Vegas. Then they had a home game versus Utah State, which they absolutely demolished. And then they had, I believe it was a road game versus Michigan and a home game versus Wisconsin. So they've had some tough opponents. They've had some real Big Ten games now. They are 1-1 in the Big Ten Conference, and luckily this game is in Minnesota. So hopefully we can have a little bit of a home field advantage. It's at nighttime, prime time once again. So the Gophers are now entering, I believe, their third primetime game of the season so far, and they will have a fourth one once again versus UCLA on the road next week. Lots of night games for the Gophers, but we will see if Minnesota is ready to take over and build off of last week's second half where they almost came back versus Michigan. Now, this USC team also lost to Michigan, also in a single score game, so that tells you maybe they could be in the same playing field. The Gophers, what I'm trying to say is maybe the Gophers could be in a similar playing field if they put everything together in a full game, not just a half, not just a quarter, not just whatever, an entire 60 minutes, 4 quarters of an entire ball game. If Minnesota can do that, then maybe this game will be very competitive and down to the wire. If they can't, it could end up a big loss once again. Now, when you're looking at this USC team, you got to look at their strengths first. And when you look at their strengths, they have insane talent, insane speed, insane depth at the wide receiver position. So much so that 7 players on this USC pass catchers for the Trojans has over 100 yards. So they can spread the ball all over the field. You've got Zachariah Branch, who is like Tyreek Hill, a little bit, I'll call him Diet Tyreek Hill. You've got Jacoby Lane, who is a big, tall receiver. And USC has had a number of receivers find success even in the years where they had down years. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Michael Pittman. These guys have been putting it together. And then you got Jordan Addison with your Minnesota Vikings now too. USC has been able to get some top-notch receivers, and it looks like this room is stacked with even more that could be playing on Sundays in the future as well. So the Gophers are going to have to find an answer across the board for multiple talented wide receivers, including Zachariah Branch, including Jacoby Lane, including Kyron Hudson, including Deuce Robinson. Those are 4 just off the top of the brain, and I know they have more than that as well. So a big major strength is the wide receiver room. Now, on top of that, they have a strong physical running back. Now, they haven't been able to run the ball very successfully on the season. They're 89th in the country, I believe, in rushing offense. But Woody Marks has the power to fill that Marshawn Lloyd role that they had last year. Marshawn Lloyd had a lot of missed tackles for us, had a lot of broken tackles, and being able to move the ball and keep that offense generating. Woody Marks is a little bit lesser of that, but still a similar role. And I'm sure USC has watched the tape time and time again and seen what Iowa, seen what Michigan, seen what UNC has put on film against this Gophers team, which has been struggling to not only tackle fundamentally, but not be giving up broken tackles left and right to the running back. So I wouldn't be surprised to see USC try an attack in that way, which is a little bit different from their typical offense. But overall, they have a running back who is capable of doing it, but we haven't seen a ton of it so far in the season. Now, another strength of theirs is a head coach who is proven to have a high-powered offense for many years. You're talking about offenses that have been dominant with Baker Mayfield, dominant with Kyler Murray, dominant with Jalen Hurts, dominant with Caleb Williams. And now you're moving on to the next iteration of Miller Moss, who has looked like he has just been handed the torch and is continuing to ball out. In his first start in the bowl game last year, he balled out 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. People are like, whoa, maybe it was fluke. Other people are like, whoa, nah, you saw it. I saw it. He can be that guy. Well, so far on the season, he has shown he can be that guy. Ton of passing production, ton of touchdowns, not very many turnovers. He's getting the job done, and he's doing it the Lincoln Riley way. So their head coach has definitely proven to be one of the newer generations of coaches in the college football space. And he has proven time and time again that his offense and his quarterbacks are dynamic. Now, like I said, also another strength of his that we kind of just wrapped up there is that this head coach in Lincoln Riley has had many quarterbacks play to their ceilings, and all of them have had different skill sets. Now, you might look at Kyler Murray and Caleb Williams as players who are fairly similar. One is bigger than the other, but they both have that scrambling ability, keeping their eyes downfield, can throw off platform and what have you. But then you look at Jalen Hurts, who was more of a dynamic runner, who could still get the passing and whatnot going, but they used him in a more running capacity and uh, uh, different way than what you saw with Kyler Murray and Caleb Williams. And then you look at the complete opposite side of the spectrum with Baker Mayfield, who wasn't running for a ton of yards, but he was passing left and right. He was picking defenses apart. And that's what you're starting to see a bit more of again with Miller Moss. So Lincoln Riley has shown he can do it with different styles of quarterback, and he can bring them out to their best and have them playing at their ceilings, which we've seen, and we've even seen early on in this season with Miller Moss. So those are the strengths for the USC Trojans. But what are the weaknesses? Well, the first one is linebacker depth and upside across the whole room. They do have a nice linebacker who's leading the room, but beyond him, it's hit or miss, and they have struggled against the run, and that comes from being a little bit more shallow in the linebacker room. On top of that, another weakness is a lot is riding on the defensive coordinator to do exactly what he did with UCLA last year. Now, USC has improved a ton in the defensive side of things, and we will go into that in a little bit here. But I just think that there's still a lot to prove, and we're early in the season, and you can maybe find openings or holes to exploit, especially in the ground game, which has definitely been the weakness for the USC Trojans. So that could be a weakness, is not being able to fill the run defense and really opening up gaps on that side. And then finally, I thought a weakness was the difficult schedule, and the morale could be down at this point in the season, but it's not, because they went 3-1. I thought they would have been 2-2, maybe even 1-3, but they proved me wrong. So props to the USC Trojans, props to their fans, even though their fans can be so annoying sometimes. But in this matchup, when you're looking at it and you're looking at this game, USC versus Minnesota at Minnesota, I think the top 3 make or breaks in this game are: one, you have to attack the defense as much as possible, probably on the ground, probably trying to find a way to open things up, trying to find a way to get Darius Taylor going. And that all starts with the offensive line. Can you get the push? Can you win in the trenches? Can you get the running game fired back up in Minnesota? That's going to be a make or break in this game. Now, another one is going to be, you want to make USC one-dimensional if possible. And you would love for that one dimension to be on the ground game, which has been the Gophers' weakness so far in the defensive side of things. But the Gophers have the number 1 rated pass defense in the country right now. Will it stay that way? I do not know, but USC has a top 15 passing offense in the country. So you're going to see strength against strength in this matchup, and which one will crumble or which one will stand tall. That's going to be a big make or break factor. And then finally, regardless of Minnesota being the number 1 pass defense in the country right now. The Gophers DBs have to play clean. They have to play penalty free. They have to play consistent. They have to play fast. They have to keep up. They can't give up big plays on third downs. They can't give up penalties. They can't give up defensive pass interferences or illegal touching or illegal contact or anything like that. The Gophers DBs have to play clean, and hopefully Justin Walley is back with those Gopher DBs. But if he's not, even more so, the Gophers DBs have to step up in a new way. So it's going to be a tough matchup for the Gophers. Now, overall, when you're looking at USC defensively, they have a new defensive coordinator, D'Anton Lynn. He was at UCLA last year, and he was in the NFL prior to that. And he brought UCLA from 87th to 10th last year when it came to total defense. They're 61st in pass, number 2 in rushing, and 14th in scoring. Now, USC has seen a turnaround with this new defensive coordinator. Right now, they're 32nd in total defense, 78th in rush defense, 15th in pass defense, 30th in scoring defense. And that is major improvements from 101st in pass defense last year, 118th in scoring defense, 116th in total defense. They were one of the worst defenses in the country, and that has already bounced back against tough competition like an LSU, like a Wisconsin, like Michigan. So overall, you'd love to see that progress, and hopefully Minnesota can try and generate some run success in this game to get the run game going. But USC's defense has proven it is a difficult opponent. Now, on the flip side, offensively, USC is 12th in the nation in passing. The Gophers are 1st in the nation in pass defense. So one of these two strengths will have to give. The Gophers have less to worry about on their weakness on the run defense side of things, but I still expect USC is going to try and attack it if they can. But overall, Miller Moss is the difference. The quarterback, he is very accurate, very lethal. Through 4 games, he has 1,200 pass yards, 8 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And he has passed the ball to 7 pass catchers with over 100 yards, and none of them over 225 yards, meaning this USC team really spreads the ball around to make you play the entirety of field, blade to blade of every blade of grass. So next, we're going to talk about the players Minnesota has to focus on slowing down for USC. That's what's coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at Gametime, because Gametime is the place to be when it comes to last-minute tickets and the lowest price guaranteed. Gametime also has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes it easier to get tickets for your favorite live events and make it even easier. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff. It filters all of the extra, and it shows you only the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Now, on top of that, you can go and toggle the all-in pricing feature, and this will show you your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. It's one of my favorite things with the Gametime app, but be sure to toggle that feature, the all-in pricing on. On top of that, you can use Gametime Picks, which I mentioned, that has curation and makes it easier to save on more sports, more concerts, more comedy, and theater, so the app can learn more about what your interests are. You also have panoramic seat views, the lowest price guaranteed, and one of the most flexible customer service policies in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply, but use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDON college for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Gophers fans, definitely be sure to follow Locked On Minnesota Sports. We do the Gophers postcast after each of these Gophers games. Last week, we talked about the Michigan game and the were they robbed and the down to the wireness of it, and the Gophers coming back. We broke it all down immediately after the game, and you can find us breaking down the USC game as well after the game over at Locked On Minnesota Sports. So be sure to hit follow over there, and then we'll dive into the deeper details. And when we return on the Monday after the game to break it down here for you at Locked On Golden Gophers. Now, we're going to talk about the 3 players that Minnesota has to slow down for the USC Trojans in this next matchup in order to have the most success they possibly can. The first player they have to slow down is Jacoby Lane. He leads the entire USC Trojans offense with 19 receptions. He also leads in yards with 221 yards, but most importantly, he leads in red zone weapon I guess he is a red zone weapon with 4 touchdowns in 4 games. So when you look at him, he's a big athlete. He's athletic. He is a big dude, 6'4", 200 pounds. He has a great connection with the quarterback in Miller Moss, and he also has the frame to be a threat in the blocking game for the run game. So physically, I don't know if Minnesota has a corner that can match up with him size-wise. Maybe Rylan Kelly could, but I do not know if Rylan Kelly will be ready for that type of assignment. Minnesota will greatly be hoping that Justin Walley can return in this one, and Justin Walley would probably find himself in coverage with Jacoby Lane quite often. Now, the number 2 player that Minnesota has to slow down in order to find the most success against USC is Eric Gentry. He is a linebacker. This guy leads the team in tackles with 30 tackles overall, but he also leads the team in sacks with 2 sacks. So you have to be aware of where he is at on the field at all times. He also has some power to him. He has a forced fumble and a fumble recovery on the season. 73% of his tackles have been solo tackles, and he can be somewhat attacked in coverage. He has a 53 coverage grade. He's given up 7 receptions on 8 targets. So that is where Minnesota maybe could try and target in the passing game. But overall, PFF has given him credit with an 80.7 overall grade and a 91.5 run defense grade. But we know PFF can be hit or miss with how their consistency is when it comes to defensive player grades. So overall, I'm still a little bit wobbly on how accurate that is. But finally, the last player you have to mention in slowing down is Miller Moss, because Lincoln Riley is that guy. Plain and simple. He is one of the most creative college coaches in the college football landscape. And on a Lincoln Riley team, it is hard not to state that you have to have the quarterback be a player you need to slow down, because he has proven time and time again that his quarterbacks not only make it on Sundays, not only play at high levels, but they have been some of the best college producers in the nation for years now. So like I mentioned, Miller Moss is currently 66% completion, 1,200 passing yards, 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in 4 games, which is not bad numbers at all. And he doesn't often put the ball in harm's way. So Minnesota, if he does give you an opportunity to capitalize, you have to capitalize. You have to pull the ball in. You have to catch it. You have to flip the field. But overall, Miller Moss is a player who can spread the ball around. He can make quick reads, and his confidence seems to be growing week to week to week. So overall, I think it's going to be a very difficult matchup for this Gophers team, but potentially you could get some pressure to him. He has been sacked 7 times so far on the season, but he doesn't get rattled. He has that next play mentality. So even if you force him into a mistake, you can't lax thinking he's going to continue to stagger or wobble off of that. He can shrug it off and keep going with his killer attitude, which he did against Michigan after throwing a pick 6. So overall, Miller Moss is probably the number 1 player. The Gophers have to slow down in this one, but Miller Moss, Eric Gentry, linebacker, and Jacoby Lane, wide receiver, are the 3 players Minnesota has to slow down in order to find the most success and hopefully pull off an upset against USC. Now, the final thing we're going to talk about on today's show of Locked On Golden Gophers is talking about the 3 biggest concerns for this week's 6 matchup against the USC Trojans. That's what's coming up next. All right, Gophers fans. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel, because FanDuel is America's number 1 sports book. And with the season underway with college football, NFL, even NBA is going to be kicked off here in the very near future. Hockey starts this next week. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more. And on that same page, you can also place your bets. And when you do that with FanDuel, America's number 1 sports book, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So you need to go to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. When you're looking at the Gophers line right now, I believe they are underdogs by 9.5 points. I think the Gophers can cover this one after seeing what they did against Michigan, and also knowing that they are stronger on the pass defense side of things. I do think that the Gophers could play this one closely, but we will see what happens. I would take that. I would place my $5 on, hopefully get that dub, but also get the $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So go to FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's number 1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of Locked On. All right, Gophers fans, we are wrapping up today's show by talking about my three biggest concerns for this game with the Gophers facing the USC Trojans here at Dinkytown at Huntington Bank Stadium on Saturday night, 6:30 p.m. Now, the number one concern that I have for this Gophers game is the youth being exposed against a savvy coach and quarterback. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, the defensive backs have been very good for this Gophers team. They have been very deep for this Gophers team. They have had some major moments for this Gophers team. Kerry Brown has had some big plays. Zaquan Bryan has had some big plays. Coy Parrish has had a play or two that have been really impressive on the defensive side of things. Aiden Gooseby has stepped up at times. Ethan Robinson has made some major plays on the defense. Justin Walley kicked it off hot to start the season before getting injured. The secondary has proven strong a lot of this season. But a lot of those guys that I named, Kerry Brown, Zaquan Bryan, Coleman Bryson, Aiden Gooseby even, a lot of these guys are younger names, not a ton of not a ton of play time, not potential, not a ton of play time on the field thus far, except for this season. So this is going to be the first time that Minnesota plays a very high-rated passing offense. Nevada wasn't that, Rhode Island wasn't that, UNC wasn't that, Michigan wasn't that, and Iowa wasn't that. That's 5 games against teams that haven't necessarily been high-powered passing offenses. So it calls into question, how serious is the number one pass defense in the country if we haven't really played a ton of really good pass defense or passing offenses? In fact, we've played a bunch of offenses on the P4 side that have been really good at running the ball, and they have gashed this defense. So when we see the first really good passing team, will they gash the defense, or will this Gophers pass defense maintain, stand strong, and remain a top 10-ish unit in the pass defense side of things? I think it all stems on how much your youth steps up, how much they get comfortable, and how much they create big plays without mistakes. If they can do that, then I think overall Minnesota could definitely be in the conversation to prove itself as one of the better passing defenses in the country. But will rotating your young guys and getting them opportunities, which we've seen a lot of in this season, will it be a strength in getting fresh legs on the field and getting different upsides on the field, different talents on the field, different athleticisms on the field, or will it be exposed? And will Miller Mouse attack certain looks at certain players, certain opportunities that he sees and that him and Lincoln Riley have broken down on the film? That is my number one worry for this Gophers versus USC Trojans game. Can Minnesota cover multiple wide receivers with real talent, with no real go-to player on their offensive side of things, and do it consistently for 4 quarters? That is going to be a major worry, a major concern for Minnesota. Now, sticking with the secondary, my second major concern is the health of Justin Walley, because this is a game where you need Justin Walley. Not only do you need him, but you need him at his best. And I don't know if he's ready. He hasn't been able to play for the last 2 games now. And this is where you really call into question, is he ready? Is he healthy? Or is this another kind of ding to the Gophers veterans when it comes to defensive play? Last year, it was Cody Lindenberg who got hurt. This year, it seems like Justin Walley. But can he be back up to full speed? Maybe not this week, but if he can get at least back into playtime and back into opportunities and back into the swing of things, that could really help the Gophers down the line. But if he isn't healthy, if he isn't ready, it could be a long day for the Gophers that not only appreciate his talent and his production, but also his leadership and his vocalness on the field. They are missing that right now, and I think they would love to have it in that secondary. And then the third and final concern that I have for Minnesota in this USC Trojans matchup is the offensive line. Can the offensive line get more push? Can they create more openings? Can they create better run lanes? That could be the difference maker in this game. USC's defense has been a sieve when it comes to the running game. It has had a soft spot when it comes to the running game. And if Minnesota can get that going, it could be the difference in the game to maybe help the Gophers not only take over time of possession, but also find opportunities to score and keep the ball in their offense's hands longer with the running game. So will the offensive line get the push finally? Also, USC hasn't been a very good team in pressures this season. In fact, when it comes to sacks, they're tied for 106th in the nation. So they really haven't been putting a ton of heat on the quarterback overall. So hopefully that means this offensive line can play stronger, play more comfortable, and hopefully start to find their confidence and swagger to help Darius Taylor be his best. Now, on top of that, could this be the turnaround game for the run game, not only in this matchup, but long term? That would be awesome. But then finally, will Darius Taylor be given the touches? Will he get the extra looks? Will he get the extra opportunities? Not just in the pass game, but also in the run game, and letting him create and get that juice going and hopefully ride the hot hand. Overall, those are my three biggest questions and concerns for the Gophers versus USC this upcoming Saturday. And tomorrow we're going to dive into more of the Minnesota outlook. Who are the players we need to step up and other things of that aspect when we're talking about this USC matchup. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. I will see you then. Roll the boat, Sky Umago Gophers, as always. And please don't forget to hit subscribe.